Hello, and welcome to NextQuest Podcast, where I ask your potential therapist questions so you don't have to. Today on the show, I welcome Rhonda Dyer, licensed clinical social worker supervisor, to talk about her practice and specialty, ecotherapy. Stuck inside my mind in this quarantine pause. The light at the end of the tunnel isn't in sight. Where do I go to find someone to talk to about all of my flaws? You can never be, baby, tell me the lies. I searched mental health and I found a therapist online. Said I'm anxious and depressed and my coping skills are not fine. We were drifted and it felt like a waste of time. I heard an interview and I felt an instant connection. I learned CBT, BBT, and mindfulness skills in each and every session. Now I'm pulling through, ready to ask the next question. 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 Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of NextQuest Podcast. I am your host, Noah Garcia, licensed professional counselor supervisor, and today I will be interviewing Rhonda Dyer, LCSW supervisor, about her practice, and ecotherapy. Rhonda, it's good to have you on the show. You are the brave one who chose to go first. I appreciate that.
It's excited being on the first podcast.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you some questions about your practice, your experience, and we'll talk a little bit about different things as they come up. So for starters, for our listeners who may be other therapists or potential clients, people looking for a therapist, what are your credentials and experience?
I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I supervise interns also. So I have had over 20 years experience as an LCSW, and I've been a supervisor since 2012 for about 8 years. So I've worked a lot in the child welfare field, and then I've worked about 10 years with the military. So just doing private practice the last 3 years.
Awesome. Now, I know a question that is important for a lot of people when seeking a therapist is do you accept insurance? And if so, which ones?
Yes, I do. I accept a lot of different insurances, Aetna, Humana, different Blue Cross Blue Shields. I think there's so many of them. And I do also a lot of employee assistance programs and contract with a lot of different ones of those to supply services. And then I have a sliding scale fee too.
Okay, awesome. What about weekend or evening appointments?
So my company is called Forest Creek Counseling, and we have Sundays available and evenings available. Some of my interns also work on Saturdays.
Okay. Is being a therapist your first career?
No, I've worked in the child welfare field, worked with adoptions and foster care for many years and really enjoyed it. And then, like I said, I was a military family life counselor for over 10 years too.
Awesome. Now tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes Rhonda Rhonda?
I love nature. I love people. So I love to go kayaking. I get a little obsessed with kayaking, and I like to backpack and hike and go camping. Just love the outdoors. I have 3 kids. They're all grown kids. And I have one grandchild, about to have my second grandchild. So that's exciting.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So I just love people. I love nature.
And so, one of the modalities that you draw upon is ecotherapy, right?
Right.
What drew you to
Um,
ecotherapy?
I attended a training in Austin about 2.5 years ago, and just really found out about ecotherapy. I've always used nature for my own health. When I'm stressed out, I go on a hike or I go camping. I've even gone camping by myself sometimes. And then just to find it just resonated so personally with me, that I got more into it. And then last year, I went and took an intensive 8-day camping trip in wilderness reflections in California and became certified as an ecotherapist. And it really combines my loves, of the outdoors and of nature and of people and helping people. So it really just fit genuinely for me.
That's wonderful. So tell me, what exactly is ecotherapy?
Ecotherapy is really using nature as another therapist, usually with a trained practitioner or therapist, and it helps people really with their interaction, their social interactions, and their interactions with nature. It's a very healing to do that, just to get out and breathe, even, and to do some different things. Some of the other things that incorporated into that is modalities like walk and talk, or equine therapy is a type of ecotherapy, horticulture therapy like gardening and playing in the dirt, really. It is a kind of ecotherapy. The key to it is that there's usually a trained practitioner that can really help with the mind body nature connection.
Okay. What are the main principles of ecotherapy?
The main principles are connecting people both socially and with the nature, with Mother Nature, and connecting them for healing. So the healing might be breathing in, it might be mindfulness, it might be learning to reduce stress by cueing into nature. There's a lot of science and research that's gone into it, and they found that a lot of people, they even did like cancer patients and tested them about their being outside or even looking outside, and how it helped them heal a lot versus being inside and not being connected to nature.
What sorts of things can ecotherapy help with?
It can help with stress and anxiety. It can help with depression. It can really help with some problem solving. There's a lot of different things that it can help with. A lot of people have also found that people that have some medical things, that if it's used as an augment to medical therapies too, so it can really recenter the person or rejuvenate them.
Now, earlier you mentioned walk and talk. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, sure. So a session has an intent, and it has a beginning and an end. So I usually use a bridge as a portal, or maybe I'll do like a round of sticks, and we will mindfully together, the client and the therapist, think about what they want to work on during the session. And then we'll enter the portal and we will walk and talk. And while we're walking and talking, there might be a bird that comes by and sings us a little song, or we might notice a snail, or that gives little clues to things. And then usually we go walk somewhere. We're walking and talking instead of sitting in an office. The walk and talk is out in nature, and usually I scout out a trail ahead of time so I know where we're going.
Yeah.
And then usually right, usually we get to a certain place and we can sit by a stream or a brook and feel the air on us and just totally be present in the moment. So there's a lot of mindfulness that goes into it. We also use some Hakomi, which is a somatic, a mind body connection, and just connecting the person really to be conscious about what's going on with their breathing and themselves, and what's going on around them in the present moment.
That sounds very cool. And I
Yeah,
think,
it's fun.
especially these days with COVID being around, if somebody wanted to meet with their therapist in person, that sounds like it would be a way to socially distance and be able to see your therapist in person.
Yes, no, I've have 4 or 5 clients that I'm doing walk and talks with, and not only that, they're working from home, or they're in, their bedroom is not only their office, it's their bedroom and where they eat, and they're feeling really closed in. And
Mhm.
some of them even say they feel like they're trapped. And so getting out in nature and being 6 feet apart and breathing the fresh air, not worrying about germs being spread in an enclosed space, has helped them so much. That it really just opens up their head and everything. So they've really appreciated just being able to be outside.
So, when you meet with clients, do you teach them ways to practice ecotherapy on their own?
Yes, and even even virtually or the telehealth, some clients that need to be outside or need to go somewhere, I've talked to them about ecotherapy things that they could do on their own. One of the things called a sit spot, and it's really a British thing, and there's lots of websites and stuff on it. But you pick a place in nature that you would go routinely, and you sit there. And usually, when we're walking somewhere, we're going somewhere, we're like measuring the miles or how fast we're going. This is just to relax and be in the moment. And usually, when you're bulldozing on a hike or something, the birds go and the animals, they go to the side, so you have to look to the side for them. That's a bird watching principles. Look to the side because they're not going to be in front of you. So this is you settle in for 15 minutes or so, maybe a half hour, and nature starts coming to you. The dragonflies will come and tickle your toes, or you'll see like a little bird, or you'll be near something. Nature will start talking to you and being with you. And instead of watching nature in a sit spot, you become part of nature. You become part of that ecosystem. And that has really helped people a lot. I have a man that lives out by the lake. He lives in Austin half the time, the lake the other half of the time, and taught him how to do a sit spot. And he identified some birds that were fighting with each other, and he could pair that or parallel that with some of his anger management, like it's territory or different things. So it starts the nature starts symbolizing things that are going on in the person's life. And so he just loves sit spots. I like doing a sit spot too. It's just relaxing finally with not an agenda and letting you become one with nature.
Earlier, I had meant to ask, when you said when you do the walk and talk, there's an aspect of a portal that you said you kind of create before the session.
Yeah, I warn people limits of confidentiality are a little bit less, that there might be somebody that walks by and will stop. It will say that there might be people will stop talking as people walk by, but there's a very much a beginning and an end. And so there's a portal. And I tell them this is where we're going to start and we'll do therapy through here. When we come back and go through the cross this bridge again, therapy's over with and we'll walk to our cars or whatever. So it sort of creates that safe space, or that even though it's a trail or something, there is like a path.
Hmm. And sounds like a boundary as well.
Yeah, it's safe boundaries. Yeah.
So, what has ecotherapy been shown to change within our bodies physiologically? And I know there's a lot of aspects of that in ecotherapy.
In Japan, they call it Shinrinku. It was called forest bathing, and there's more oxygen being given off by trees. And so when you're in nature or around a lot of trees, there's more oxygen exchange that helps your body. It really helps your mind a lot too. There's some physiological differences that have happened just touching the earth, or feeling your bare feet on the ground. Some, I'll call it tree huggers, right? But some huggers can feel some vibrations through the trees, that they feel like they're being understood, or they can give some of their stress or some of their pain to the tree, and the tree's so big it can absorb that. So there's a lot of like chemical changes that happen with your body that affect your mind being in nature.
Very cool. Now, what are some misconceptions about ecotherapy? What is ecotherapy not, for example?
It's not recreational. So just being out like on a hike or going in nature, it's not that. It has a purpose and an intent, and you're usually with a trained person. So like going on a through hike, or just going on a hike or swimming in a river or something, that's good for you, but it doesn't have psychological effect, because you probably need somebody that's guiding you and trying to find the symbolism in things, and just connecting both socially with nature. It's probably the biggest difference.
That sounds like a pretty big difference there. What kind of experience do you have working with particularly vulnerable clients, such as those who are transgender, undocumented, or BIPOC, to name a few?
I work with a lot of LGBT clients, And it's usually not about LGBT issues. It's usually about relationship issues or about anger management or stress issues that plays into it. I guess I could say I was raised by an LGBT person, so makes me very accepting. I think that helps people a lot too. I worked with a lot of different cultures. I haven't done any immigration things, but in the military, there's a lot of different cultures that you work with. So I think I love being a student of culture and always looking at it as trying to learn new things. So that's sort of where I'm at. I'm pretty open and accepting of all people, really.
That's great to hear. I know you kind of explained this a little bit earlier in terms of how your session is structured. You said, you have the portal, you have the beginning and the ending. What about in between? Is there any structure, while you're on that walk?
Yeah, we usually discuss what they want to discuss, the issue that they're bringing up, and it could be discrimination in the workplace. It could be just stress management. So they're bringing up what the issues are and how it's affecting their life, and then we talk about that, and then we also connect nature to it. And then, like midpoint, we do some deep breathing. And like I asked this one person who was dealing with some discrimination in the workplace, if you were anything in nature, what would you be? And we're at this creek, and she said, I would be the river. And I'm like, would you be the current, or would you just be sitting on the river? And she said, I would be the current. I'm just going to go with the flow and I'm not going to make any waves. All of a sudden, a beautiful leaf just falls from this tree, like a big maple leaf, and sits on the top of this river. And the current twirls it around and sweeps it away. She goes, I would be that leaf. It was just like, this is like perfect timing. And then before we cross the bridge, we give thanks and ways that we could give back to Mother Nature, and that it's reciprocal. That not only do we take, but we also give back to heal the earth also. And so we just do a moment of thanking for the session and thanking for nature being there, and then we cross the portal again. So there is sort of a little bit of a structure to it. Yeah, we give thanks to the earth at the end.
I love that.
Yeah, I also do. I discuss it a couple times in sessions before we go out to a walk and talk, or before we go to nature. Usually, what they like, what their physical limitations are. If they have a bad knee or allergic to things. I don't know, like pollen. But I have a lot of nature things in my office. So I have plants and rocks, and I have giant pictures that I took myself on some hikes in Yosemite. And so it's real sort of personal, but it's also very nature oriented. So just get them talking about that, just figure out their limitations and what they really would get out of it sometimes before we even go. So, and usually a session in the office lasts about 50 minutes, but in nature, it lasts 30 minutes. And so it just takes a little more time to walk and talk and to get there. And so I usually budget 90 minutes for a ecotherapy session.
Okay. Okay. My next question is, would you say you're directive or non-directive in your approach? It sounds like there's some structure, but what about, interpersonally?
I try really to be non-judgmental and to listen to everything that people have to say, but I also am known to give blunt feedback and be honest with people, and tell them, and oftentimes in form of a question. It could be about infidelity or different anger, stress, whatever they're going through, and I sort of question that. So I would say a little bit of both, but I don't have a prescribed set of curriculum. Some
Mhm.
modalities have like step by step. I
Right.
don't have that. So I really let the client direct it, but I also give really honest feedback.
Okay, great. I know a lot of people really appreciate that. What could a new client expect from an initial session with you?
Usually, I give bits of confidentiality and with the legal things of saying you're going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else or going to hurt other people. And then we get right into it and really discuss what brought them to therapy, what's going on with them, what are their challenges in life and their stressors. Because usually people come to therapy for a reason, and just get those reasons out right away. Start thinking about different resources for them that might help them. I also talk about the balance of your life of activity, nutrition, and sleep, and how important those are. So we get into a little bit of the mind body connection,
Hmm.
maybe describing some emotional regulation and how the body reacts to that or doesn't. So then I always talk about what motivates them or what do they do for fun, and that stumps a lot of people. like what do you do for fun? And they're like, why do you ask that question, and I really want to do it because what will motivate them to change, what will be the reward for going through this difficult time of assessing this and being conscious of some things going on. And lots of times it is nature, it's being outside, or it's going doing things with friends, and sometimes they have isolated themselves and quit doing that. And so it's like that is something we need to work towards. So we set up goals pretty easily, usually by the end of the first session.
Okay. How would you say your clients describe or experience you?
I've worked with a lot of police officers, and I had one give me a great compliment a couple weeks ago. He said his had a therapist, and the therapist couldn't handle what he was sharing. He said, "Oh, you should have my therapist. You could tell her anything, it doesn't phase her at all." And I'm like, it's sort of true. I've heard a lot of things and dealt with a lot of trauma. My first work was with foster care kids and sexually abused kids, and so people usually describe me as being tough and not not letting major traumas bother me.
And non-judgmental, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm not judgmental.
Are you the type of therapist who will laugh or cry with your clients?
I like to laugh with everybody. I don't hardly cry with anybody, so that's probably it right there.
Okay. How do you define holding space for someone?
I tell them directly about it. I'd like to create a safe space where they can have a full range of emotions and that they're safe to say whatever they want to say and what's going on. It has been tricky doing telehealth, doing that. It's a challenge, but I even tell them if you're in my office, you'll be a safe space, and I would give you a box of Kleenex for you telling me what's going on. But also that safe space frees them to say anything they want to say, maybe things they've never told anybody before.
Do you think that with telehealth that people are disclosing things they maybe typically wouldn't?
I've had some clients do that recently. Yeah, there's some things they have never told other people. Would hope that they would tell me in my office also, though, the same things. So what's been different is some of them aren't getting out of bed, and I'm talking to, and I feel a little bit uncomfortable, and somebody's in their pajamas talking to me from their bed. So I've some teenagers I was like, hey, call me back when you're dressed.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, get up out of bed, or can you go to another room, and then I've had some people like walk me around their house. It's like, wow. I just had a client that ended her like 15 EAP sessions, and she disclosed early childhood sexual abuse. And she said, I was ashamed all my life, and you're the I finally told you. I told my mom when it happened and nobody believed me. And she goes, I really feel like you freed me. And that, I think, was like creating a safe space. I think it's challenging to do on telehealth.
Oh, absolutely. It
Yeah.
creates this whole other kind of barrier to negotiate with.
We're
Now,
all learning.
yeah. Now I know you're an LCSW supervisor. What is the best advice you've ever received from a supervisor of yours?
I had a great supervisor for my clinical, and he's still a good friend, and I still do some contract work with him. And I use this a lot. He said, if it wasn't for stress, I would be an amoeba.
I
Like,
like
yeah,
that.
we need a little bit of stress to move us along.
Well, and stress keeps things interesting too,
Hmm.
but it all depends how we deal with it.
True.
What would you say you've personally learned about yourself or the world through your practice?
I love listening to people's stories. I think people are fascinating. And even sometimes when I'm not in therapy or doing therapy, people start telling me their life history, and I don't back away from it. I just like, that is so interesting. So I really like hearing people's different stories. I don't, it's sort of humbling. I don't really think I have a story, but I guess I do because I've been all over the world doing therapy with the military and been some exciting and fun places and challenged myself, even being in my shape or not that great a shape, to do some outdoor nature stuff. So yeah, I love everybody's stories.
What do you do to take care of yourself? We encourage our clients to do self care all the time. What do you do for you?
Yes, I love to be in nature. So I like to float in a river or be in a lake, and more than a swimming pool. I would choose a river or a lake over a swimming pool. When I sit in a kayak and I get in a river, I just feel home. I can have this big sigh, and I'm just like, ah, I'm home.
Hmm.
So, and I talk to the bald eagles as I'm going down the river or something. So, nature heals me, and nature is the thing that sometimes when I'm really stressed out, I need nature. And really big city things stress me out. So I like being outside. I tried gardening. That is not for me. I tried it, but
I'm terrible at it too. Every plant I've ever owned has died. I don't have a green thumb, but I
ugh,
can keep a dog alive because I've had a dog for many years. So
that's
that's good
awesome.
news.
Yes, that is.
How would you define happiness?
I think it's relative. I think that sometimes you choose to look at the happy things, but you can also be realistic. And happiness is good, but it doesn't have to be all the time. That we should have a full range of emotions, and we should be allowed to be sad or to be angry or, to be melancholy. I've dealt with some grief issues on my own, and I think we have a right to have a wide range of feelings. We just don't ever have them forever, that they come and they go, and it's okay to have a flow of different feelings.
And I think a lot of people tend to get stuck in the belief that happiness is like a permanent state of being. It's just as transient as any other emotions. I had somebody, a supervisor once, tell me, we should expect to be happy maybe 25% of the time, neutral 50% of the time, and sad 25% of the time, which
Yeah,
makes sense to me.
I can tell you when I don't think about it, that's when I'm probably more happy. And when I did my ecotherapy training last year, they would let us go off into the woods, and there was salmon in the water, and there was bay leaves falling. I was ecstatic. And I would roll and smell the leaves, and then I went in the water. I'm the water. I become the water. And I was just like, I am so happy right now. I was just like, I don't know, and it was just beautiful. Like, not only does it heal me, but being immersed in nature really makes me happy.
I can relate to that. I feel most at home at the beach.
Awesome. On the ocean, when the waves hit and the content of the salt water that you're breathing in, it's really good for your body.
That's awesome. I never knew that. I mean, it explains a lot.
Mhm.
Now, here's a question that's a little vulnerable. What is the most embarrassing moment you've had as a clinician thus far?
Oh no. Oh my gosh. So about a month ago, and really not that long ago, I took a young lady out that was very stressed from telehealth, from working at home. She hated working at home. And she told me she was a hiker and a camper. So we went out, and the forecast was a little bit of rain. And so we're in a tree cover, and we were doing this, and she's telling me about her stress. And all of a sudden, a thunderstorm comes up, and it just starts pouring rain. The lightning is hitting close by. I'm
Oh
counting
no.
1001, 1002. I'm like, and I almost like I'm on a roller coaster and where you're scared to death, but you're laughing. I
Mhm.
started doing that. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna die. You know? And I could tell she wanted to run. I could just tell she wanted to run out there. And the rain just soaked us, and she goes, I could feel the stress dripping off of me. I'm like, we're gonna die. And so we get to this open place, and you had to run through it to get to a gazebo. And I said, go ahead and run. And then we ran to the gazebo, and it was just torrential downpour, and she just started spilling her heart right there about nobody understands the stress that she's going through. Her husband didn't understand her anxiety and her depression and her stress from having to work from home. So I was just worried that we are going to get hit by lightning.
Yeah, that's terrifying. There is, though, nothing quite like being outside in the rain. There's something about that that just feels good, as long as there's no lightning.
Right, right.
Rhonda, what is your ideal client?
I like a little I would call it like a street kid. I like people that are blunt and honest and sort of tell me what's going on. I don't like having to dig for the feelings or what's going on. I like people to just tell me sort of what's going on, what's happening, even how crazy it could be. So I like that. I do a lot of assignments to people, like reading assignments or go do a sit spot or something. I'm always surprised when people actually follow through and do that. So I sort of like that too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome when our clients, listen to what we ask them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's sort of fun too. I've been surprised at that. That's good.
Now, is there anything else that you think a potential client or other therapists should know about you, or it would be helpful to know about you, or that you want people to know about you?
I really would like to develop some, I know it's really hard during COVID, but develop some groups where we could connect with nature and with each other. I imagine maybe doing a grief group at a campfire and having a communal sharing of our feelings. I think that would be awesome. I'm learning to become a master naturalist so I can identify more things in nature. That's something I'm working on.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, yeah. It's finding the time sometimes though. But yeah, I guess that's it. I would like to do more ecotherapy things, and we're all just trying to survive during this whole change of the pandemic. So I think it's been a little bit difficult for me and for some other people, just like our clients. It's hard being home all the time or doing telehealth or doing this video thing all the time. So I'd like to do more things outdoors and just trying to conceptualize what that would be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could take your telehealth sessions outside in your backyard or something.
Have better Wi-Fi for sure.
Wi Fi is always the issue, isn't it?
It is.
Well, Rhonda, what about ecotherapy? Was there something I didn't ask that you think people would benefit from knowing?
Yeah, there's a lot of techniques that therapists already use that they could use in nature also. There's some mindfulness things that go really techniques that go really well in nature. You could do some creative art things in nature and just take pictures of it. Some rock sculptures or some mandalas in nature just to be creative and stuff too. So yeah, there's also a lot of people in Austin with Children in Nature Network, and just to get kids outside more, and that balances them. This is a really difficult time for kids also.
Mhm.
So Richard Love said talked about nature deficit disorder, and if we could just get people outside more and interacting with nature and getting back, I think that would help a lot too.
That's awesome. I think that ecotherapy is a necessity, especially with COVID going on these days. We need to get back outside. Anything else you'd like for our listeners to know, Rhonda?
I have a website that describes some of this, forestcreekcounseling.com. And I have really a diverse array of interns, so that's cool too. I would say if you want to get more into ecotherapy, I'm part of a Texas ecotherapist collective, and we have events every month, and we have a Facebook page, a group page. So there's a lot more ecotherapists out there, and there's a lot of people that want to become ecotherapists. I'd say join in.
Are there any books that potential clients could read that might give them a little more information about ecotherapy?
Yeah, there's Your Brain in Nature. There's Ecotherapy, Healing with Nature and Mind by Craig Chalquist, which is sort of the best one, really. That Richard Love has Vitamin N, and he also has a book called Last Child in the Woods and Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. So those are some ecotherapy, ecopsychology, resolving the earth, healing the mind is another one by Rozak. So there's some great books out there.
That's awesome. I thank you so much for that info. And thank you so much for being on the show today. I definitely learned a lot of new things about ecotherapy and definitely something I'm going to look into in the future.
Great. That sounds great. All right, cool. Well, thank you for having me. And this has been awesome. This is my first podcast I've ever done too. So
Same.
like I really and I didn't pass on any of the questions. So, like I know I could have passed on something, but I enjoyed answering all your questions. It was awesome format.
Awesome. I'm glad you liked it.
The next question. The next question. The next question. The next question.
Thank you for listening to the very first ever NextQuest podcast. I learned something new today, and I hope you did too. Stay tuned for our episode next week featuring Jennifer Reedy, who will talk about her practice and specialty working with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, or PMADs. NextQuest Podcast is sponsored by Jan Dimmitt Resources. Save yourself the time and stress of credentialing and let the experts at Jan Dimmitt Resources do what they do best. For over 20 years, Jan Dimmitt Resources has provided administrative support and credentialing services to mental health professionals in Texas and beyond. Visit their website at jandimmitt.com. That is JANDIMMITT.com, or call 512-731-5725 for more information on all the ways they can make running your practice easier for you. NextQuest Podcast, brought to you by NextQuest Counseling, relies solely on donations to keep this project going. Please consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page at www.patreon, that's patreon.com/NextQuest or making a one-time donation on my website at www.nextquestcounseling.com/about NextQuest Podcast. Until next question, this is Noah Garcia signing off.